Hi, welcome to Montessori Farm School. You may be watching this video because we're closed for summer and not touring right now, or maybe you're already enrolled and you and your family are looking at this together to get excited about the year ahead. We sure are too. So I wanted to take you around and give you a little bit of a peek at our classroom before we get it completely changed over for camp. And then it rests a little bit in July. So welcome and thanks for watching. I'm gonna do a quick kind of turn just to give you an idea of all of it. It's a very large space with a long history, and our building is almost 100 years old. We've been in it for 7 years now, and we love it so much. Upstairs there are teacher offices and storage. I'm just going to pan around. It gives you an idea of just how spacious and beautiful it is with the light coming in. And we're going to walk back to the door, which is up front here in just a second. Make sure that I do a full turn here. Oh, look at that ficus. It's so pretty. And such a nice part of our classroom. Plants are really important to making and creating and keeping an environment that is refreshing and life-giving and feels really good for our students. So up here is the coat space. Not a lot going on right now, but a busy area in the morning. Our students keep rain gear here and snow gear and changes of clothes. And it is important for them to have all that because we are outside a lot. We love to play outside, to work outside, and we get nice and dirty and happy. And so you can just see that great view and the great light. That's an outside chair that'll go outside when we're back in. We're gonna come around to this first section of the curriculum. If you've not been in Montessori before, you may not realize that it's sort of divided physically into curriculum areas, but the children work all over the classroom. But this is where it's housed. So this U-shaped area is called sensorial, and so important for our 3 to 6 learners. It is where they learn to order or practice ordering and discriminate, and they match. And it's really vital to undergirding all of the academic skills, but it's just beautiful and fantastic and fun too. So we've got the pink tower and red rods here, very classic Montessori materials you'll see all over the world in the 3 to 6 classroom. We have things for color matching and sorting and grading and weights and smoothness and heavy and light and sound cylinders for matching and shape sorting. We've got this broad stair, which is for discrimination of width. If you come over here, you'll see some more classic Montessori materials. These on this shelf are knob cylinders and knobless cylinders, and the blue ones are the geometric solids. Throughout our classroom, we have 1 and 2 person tables, and we also have areas that are more tucked in for those learners that want to be kind of on their own and more social for those types of friends. This shelf houses puzzles and matching, and the cube puzzles that you see down here are for a very sensorial experience at this age. This is a binomial cube, and you can see it comes down like this, well worn and well loved. It is a wonderful 3-dimensional puzzle, but also corresponds to an algebraic equation, which they learn if they stay in and they go a little further. They'll work with that in lower L. Down here, we have constructive triangles, which are also part of the introduction to geometry in this area. But all of this builds the mathematical mind of the child. Very satisfying. You see your future engineers over here working on building and creating things that are just stunning and really cool. Because it's a 3-year classroom, these types of materials get interacted with in different ways at a different part in the child's cycle. So they're going to do extensions and variations with a different level of knowledge and attention as they move on. We're moving into science, and as we ended the year, we were studying the planets. So you see those are out in full force on the top here. We also do botany studies and vertebrate classes and invertebrates. These shelves do change out throughout the year. We've got things like very hands-on introduction to the elements. And then you've got some sorting with land, air, and water animals. And then it'll get even more abstract with the cards. Everything in Montessori sort of goes top to bottom and left to right, and we always introduce everything in a hands-on way. If we're going to talk about insects, first of all, we're going to see plenty outside, but we also have sometimes models and sometimes real-life examples that they can use, as we do here, and work with. And I'm going to come back here real quickly. You've got layers of the earth and precipitation. Under this tree, which I mentioned earlier, is a wonderful place to sit and read a book. We'll have topical books out in the basket beside it, but there are books everywhere in the classroom. We want to give them lots of access to that. Here's a nature table, and this right now is a changing science display all about rocks and minerals, matching and sorting and investigating in a really lovely way so they can get their hands on these things and experience them and make them part of their world. Children can learn so much vocabulary, and they want to name things at this age. So nomenclature is worked throughout our classroom, and we give them the real names for everything they're studying. I'm going to pan a little bit here. Beyond the globes, this horseshoe-shaped area is all language development, reading and spelling and handwriting, and a beautiful globe there. So these are called metal insets, and they are for handwriting practice because the tracing builds those muscles and the formation of letters. And so when you have anything with little knobs like this, we also have them on our maps and other works in the classroom. It develops that pincer grip, the strength and refinement they need to hold the pencil, and they do really cool things with this. Beyond that, we get into beginning language lessons. We've got storytelling, and you'll have different storytelling objects up here on the top. We've got De Donde Eres and Where Are You From, the same book in both Spanish and English. Our classroom does have a bilingual teacher, that is Adele, and she helps us all with both of those languages, and we have bilingual students as well. You've got things that can continue that handwriting practice with this shape tracing and chalkboard practice. This is a cool one you might have seen before with a magnet for tracing. Down at the bottom we have extensions for children that are doing creative writing or maybe want to stamp some words and trace them. This is a really awesome chalkboard. We use it for small group lessons, for art, for handwriting practice, and just for scrubbing. Over here is really the heart of the beginning phonics, and we have new bookshelves here. So some of this is just the containers may be trading out, but what's lovely is the children can come and get a sandpaper letter out of this box and then find the matching box down here. So in the case of they have an alligator and an apple in there. Everything in these sound boxes that are color-coded will have that initial sound that's on that sandpaper letter. Sandpaper letters are traced so that there's muscle memory and a real impression left. I was just reading a study in Edutopia yesterday about how handwriting and the practice of handwriting really aids in reading acquisition, and Montessori knew that right on from the beginning, so we're still learning. These are all initial sound cards, so once they've worked with a group of sounds, they can sort these. And these are spelling boxes that have just the movable alphabet letters and objects for that group that they've learned. And so they can spell with that red group, rag and tag and mat and cat and ram, those kinds of things. So those are what we call CVCs, and you see everything in this pink series are CVCs, consonants and short vowels and consonants. You've got rhyming, and you've got special vowel practice because vowels are so close together in sound, and a lot of work in this CVC area. We're going to pan this way. This is further in the language sequence for some of our readers that are working on longer words, digraphs, blends, multisyllable, and then in the green, they're getting into phonograms. At the very bottom, we have readers that are from EPS. Those are primary phonics readers. They're fantastic. They work right with what we're doing in our lessons and go very slowly and methodically, and the children are really beyond ready when they approach those. These are movable alphabets. They're great in a Montessori classroom. Children can spell stories or a short phrase or do a word list. Like you see here, we call these dictation cards because they're held by a teacher, and the child might have this at their rug and be moving back and forth, and they can come to us and we'll say kin, and they'll go back and spell that and pull down the letters, and then we'll say fat and wet, and they'll keep going and they can check their own work. Checking is so cool about Montessori because they can check their own work. There's not that heavy feeling of, oh, the teacher's going to correct me. They can make those corrections if they want to on their own, and then they can write it and put it away. Because usually children that are doing those spelling lists are also documenting things. Let's talk about that. Montessori is hands-on, but sometimes we record things. So if you do get a paper home with some math or language work on it, it's because it's already been done at a table or a rug with real concrete objects, and then they're recording it. That's a big deal. Oh, I went right past our map stand. Under these globes, you will have throughout the year, they've already been packed up, maps for the world and each of the continents, and we will study those as we go through with stories also about the places and people and their foods and their customs. And what we want to do is introduce children to new things around the world and how we are all the same. We want them to appreciate differences, and we want them also to realize how similar we are. So these are other geography shelves. This will have more on it when we get out our landforms again. This one has a little bit of the study of the universe here. Also things like landmarks of the world. And of course, these are popular animals of the world and where we live. There's introductory map work, and even the introduction to history with personal timelines, days of the week, and months of the year. And you've got a watercolor table here because we were in space. People were painting Jupiter when we closed down. So I'll give you a look back on that. And while we look back, I want to say the beauty of Montessori is that it is a mixed age classroom by design. 3 and 6-year-olds are in here together in the morning learning together. And that's so important because they get to see the full scope and sequence. They can repeat when they want to repeat. They can move on when they want to move on. They're not held in lockstep with each other. Coming back to this is a little group weaving project. We will change out. And at the very back of the classroom, there's a classroom library and our musical instruments and storage for teachers. This is where the child's bathroom is. Little step down, that's what that warning sign is. And we're gonna come back to under the stairs. So we've got this beautiful open stairway with the glass in it. And tucked under here is what we call our self shelf. And on the self shelf are lots of things for centering and just refocusing and developing the ability to self-regulate. So we've got a weighted blanket and a taggy blanket and something to hold and different books to read and different labyrinths and things to work with, and even some yoga cards in there. These are where the children will put work if they finished with it. So you can see that somebody was working on this. They've put it back into their folder. These are mostly empty because of the end of the year. So on Fridays, we'll send some things home. We're gonna walk around the steps. Thanks for staying with me. I know this is a long video. There's so much I love to talk about and so much in here. But everything that's in here is in here purposefully and by design. There's nothing that's just a throwaway. This part of the classroom is where we do hand washing and individual snack if needed, so the tables are separated safely, and a teacher is at this sink. It used to house a lot of food prep for practical life. Huge area in Montessori for this age group. Practical life includes taking care of self, your environment, and just developing the skills you need to learn all those other things and be independent and productive person. In lieu of that, we still have a lot of practical life and just sequences without sharing food. This is part of it. These are dressing frames. So you're practicing buckling and zipping and not bow tying, all these wonderful things. There's a dishwashing area where they can wash and rinse and dry. This is a fine motor shelf, which includes pouring, spooning, and tonguing and wet squeezing. really building those fine motor skills, but just order, coordination, confidence, and independence. I love, speaking of independence, I love these baskets here. These are polishing baskets and they are so much fun. There's wood polishing, penny polishing, plant care, silver polishing, and glass care. There's others too. We switch them out sometimes for shoe polishing or table scrubbing. These longer sequences develop task commitment and really help them become ready to learn what's next. And they're so satisfying and fun and great to do in a social way. There's a bigger table here, so you'll often see somebody doing some math work here, somebody else spooning, somebody polishing silver, and maybe somebody using one of these works over here. Continuing in practical life. Coffee grinding and sunflower tweezing. These were grown in our garden this year and they lasted us all year long. One of our students actually took the seeds home. Oh, it's tough to do. We have tweezers here, and grew us new sunflowers. There's a sewing sequence that will change out. It had constellations during space, even knot tying and needle threading. It brings up what's so fabulous about Montessori called isolation of skills. So if we're going to learn coffee grinding, let's go back to this one, but I love the way knot tying and needle threading are two different works. First, you're going to learn how to carry a tray and how to, where to take your work and how to pull out your chair. You're going to have a lesson later on hand washing and also on putting on and taking off an apron and sweeping, which will help you clean up the tray. All these individual things come together when we do a work like coffee grinding, or down at the bottom here where you see soap grating that moves into, there would be grated soap in there, into suds whipping. Some of it's in the dishwasher, but there's a hand mixer in there and they can make lots of bubbles. There's even practice for sweeping, and you see things like lids and containers and screw driving. These will change throughout the year. The art shelf's a little sparse right now because we're changing things out and putting things away, but this has lots of tools and materials to work on art, work on creativity, work on focus. And art can be a way that they process and resolve feelings, and they develop those fine motor skills. Speaking of fine motor, there's a lot here on this cutting shelf that they can cut and pin punch. Some more that they can do with just a bowl of beans. And I think right now there are planets in here. Let's take a peek. Oh yeah, look at that. All right, so now we've entered the math area primarily, and that kind of works around this horseshoe shape. Beautiful. And it's hands-on, it's concrete to abstract, a lot of number to numeral work, a ton of 1 to 9 in variations, and we'll keep changing those out, but much of it will stay consistent. Like these bead colors, this is called our bead stair in Montessori. 1 is always red, 2 is always green, 3 is always pink, etc. We spend a lot of time working with those, counting those, practicing the formation of numbers, the recognition of numbers. Rote counting is different than recognizing a number visually out of order. So there's lots of practice there. Continuing with that's another bead stair extension. Here they are in a bead hanger, and with the teens included. There's a teens and tens board. We work on 1 to 20. We work on 100 board. And this gorgeousness is our golden bead system. So it's base 10 system that Montessori developed with 1. Whenever you see a golden bead, it's always 1, a golden bar is 10, a golden square is always 100, and we do count these, and they count them a lot. And then this is 1,000 beads. Well, that's hard to count because they're all together, but guess what? We've already worked through this building tray and exchange tray to show that 10 ones is the same as 1 10 bar. And then we find out that 10 10 bars is the same as 100 square, and that 10 100 squares is the same as 1,000 cube. And we play games with exchanging. That comes in really helpful later on when you're doing math operations to understand changing place value, right? So they do also a whole hierarchy of numbers with decimals and beads. With numbers and beads, rather, numerals. Over here you see the introduction to operations. This needs a little spruce up, but you can get an idea. We've got addition and multiplication, which essentially is just bigger addition, right? 3 times 3 is 3 plus 3 plus 3. Over here you've got squaring. So you can, if you've worked with the numbers and the bead stair, you know that pink is always 3, and they can fold the chain and see, I'm doing this one-handed, that is the same as the square of 3. And so they can extend the chain on the rug and count it. They've got printed arrows here and figure out how many are in the square of 3. Children that love this linear counting and really ordered and can stop and start and recognize larger numbers may move on and do a lot with this. This is cubing and what we call the long chains. In between here is a sweet little piece shelf. Unlike the self shelf, which is just for you, the piece rows can be used, or sometimes it's a piece stone, and here's a story of it, for conflict resolution. Conflict resolution and setting boundaries and listening and resolving things and making amends are the biggest work we do. So I don't want to just scan over that. We can tell you more about that when we sit and talk, because I love to talk about that, and I've talked to a lot of teachers. I've given conferences and presentations on it too in the classroom management. So it's important to us all. Subtraction and division continue here. That bottom shelf will change out with other abstract math things depending on my elder class. We might be doing some fraction work, money, or time. There's a teacher desk there. And we've kind of gone all over the room, I think. I wish I had students here, because normally on a tour I can point out where they've left work out. They come in here every day excited to do the things that they love and to come back to them and maybe finish them or master them, and excited to see what they want to try next. Throughout the work cycle inside, they are choosing work that they're interested in. We're observing where interest and ability come together, and they are also asking for lessons, and we're inviting them to lessons. People work during that work cycle that is intentionally long and open. That's where they develop concentration. We're not interrupting them all day long. They learn from each other. There's vital peer-to-peer teaching that goes on, and so much language exchange that they're really gifted students. There's a little chime that we use when we want to call attention. I'm just going to chime us out and say thanks for watching.